Okay, how we doing? All right, good. Hey guys, greetings. I am here, and what we're gonna do is, I know it's a different night that I would normally do anything. This is an extra bonus. Um, I wanted to make sure that because we're gonna be starting in First Thessalonians, we're gonna go through verse by verse like I do with books, um, and we'll start Thessalonians. But what I want to do is this: is I want to wrap up because there really isn't a lot in the last two chapters of Zechariah, but I do want to just touch on the high points. So we're going to wrap up Zechariah right now. Next week, as you know, will be Resurrection Sunday, the 17th. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Palm Sunday, and we're going to go through and I'm going to try to get on. My plan is, if possible, I'm going to get on every day next week. And for each day of what we call Passion Week in the Christian fellowship, I want to kind of just touch on that day's events in the Bible, culminating in the resurrection. But we'll talk more about that as we get closer. For now, I just want to make sure that because we just finished Second Peter, we did a verse by verse through that, and I just want to make sure that we wrap up with Zechariah, and then we'll start Malachi for our next Old Testament book, because why not? There's a lot of things that we can do, that we can touch on in the Old Testament, and we'll cover as many books as I can in the time that the Lord has granted me. I'm 51 now, so. But I'm just going to touch on the high points of this. If you remember, we were talking about how in chapter 12, that 12, 13, and 14, the last three chapters of Zechariah, were second coming end time prophecies, where chapters 1 to 11 were primarily focused on the first coming. We saw in 9:9, for example, where it talked about that he would ride into Jerusalem on the colt, in the foal of a donkey. And it talks about, later on we got to 12:10, which is after the second coming. But, they're going to look back on him who they pierced. So we have, the events that happen between, with the crucifixion and the resurrection and his heavenly, where he is now doing intercession for us, and he's our high priest, and our Savior, and our King, and our Lord. And so, but we saw things like back about 7 chapters ago, where his offices were described, that he had a threefold office of prophet, priest, and king. And we talked about that. And we showed in the Old and New Testament how Christ is the only one that fulfills all three offices. And then, we get to 11, and it talks about the false shepherds and the worthless shepherds. And, we're going to see that wrapped up today. When we talk about 13 and 14, it talks about in that day, it starts out in chapter 13. And I made some notes here. I encourage you to read 13 and 14. But in that day is referring to the last days. That he talks about that there will be... let me get back here for a second. In Jerusalem... that there will be if I could read my writing, that would be awesome. Okay, the Lord will be returning. Displaced the people. It talks about strike the shepherd in verse 7, and the people will be scattered. It talks about, too, in the first few verses, that there's going to be false prophets. They're going to be back to their idols. The unclean spirit will be around. It even talks about verses 1 to 3 of chapter 13 that all these things will be going on when he comes back. And, we see that now. If you flip later on, make a note of this. 2 Corinthians 6:14 to 18, it talks about, mixing biblical faith and Christianity with worldly things. And it talks about, that you can't do that because it becomes something that is not biblical anymore. And it says, when it talks about for what fellowship has Christ with Belial. Belial is another name for Satan. It was one of the Jewish names for Satan in the Old Testament. So when you see these churches today, and you can turn on almost any Christian network, they're mixing all kinds of things in. There's people that are, Andy Stanley talks about, disengaging from the Old Testament, and we, it's just all kinds of. I'm not even going to go into all that. There's just you can look and see what these people that call themselves pastors are doing, and it's disgusting. Look at the lyrics to a lot of what passes for Christian worship music and contemporary Christian music these days. But it talks about, and I think back to Deuteronomy 18, and you can read from 20 on probably. I think it starts in 20 and 22. It talks about putting them to death. And it says in verse 3 here that these people that are doing false prophecies should be put to death by the parents of the people that gave birth to them. So they're still talking about putting them to death. And he takes that very seriously. And it talks about, there will be shame when they're caught. We get up to like, where was this? 7, 6 and 7 in chapter 13, there's shame. And, they talk about the marks that they got on them from false prophesying. And, they make excuses and all that kind of thing. So, it talks about striking the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. Um, and then in 8, it talks about, it gets into how there's going to be a third of them. When they scatter, a third of them will remain in the land. If you go back and read Jeremiah 30 to 33, that is the telling of that remnant that's going to be restored back in Israel. When Jesus comes back, there will be a group of Jewish people that will return to the Lord. They will be sanctified in the heart, not on tablets, it says, of stone, but their hearts will be circumcised. And we see references to that all the way back in Deuteronomy 30, verse 6. I mean, he talks about circumcision of the heart. That whole Ezekiel 36, 26 to 28 experience of regeneration, where God pulls out the heart of stone, puts in the heart of flesh, and then my spirit in you. 25, verse 25, the waters, the washing of regeneration, which we see in the New Testament. You can definitely check that out. But I mean, it goes all the way back to Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 6, that, he talks about that circumcision of the heart. I've been reading through Proverbs. I read a proverb before I eat, and a chapter of Proverbs. And I see it over and over again that, he's already saying that it's not animal sacrifice that he's looking for, but righteousness. So we have the Jewish remnant in the land, and it is a third of the people that they estimated that it would be, and it says it in here. And they will say that God will call them His people, and they will call Him their God. And once again, they will return and be restored in faith, in spirit. His people will be restored to Him, who He initially called to be His people in Deuteronomy 7. It says, starting out in 14, the Mount of Olives, when Christ returns, His feet will hit the Mount of Olives, it'll split. Many of the Jewish people will flee. It says that in Revelation. There will be a great earthquake. The mountains will be moved. There's going to be a war in the nations, between the nations and Christ. We see that in the end times. Um, and his armies will return, and they will wage war and battle with the nations of the earth. You can read Psalms 1 and 2 also. Um, it talks about, and check this out, in 14 verse 6, it talks about how people they'll just turn to ash where they stand. They'll turn to stone, or ash. And it says that their eyes will melt in their sockets, their tongues will melt in their mouths and cleave to their mouths right where they stand. It gives a really good description of nuclear fallout, nuclear war. Check that out. And we could see that in our day. I mean, they didn't know anything about that. And and then it kind of gets to the end where Christ is in Jerusalem and he's going to be ruling. And it talks about the Feast of Booths. You can go back to Leviticus chapter uh, 23, 26. And you can see the 7 feasts that God set up for his people. And the Feast of Booths, also called Feast of Tabernacles, is the end one. And it talks about how in our faith, and we'll talk about this at some point. I've done sermons on the 7 feasts and what it means for New Testament Christians, because they have meaning. Nothing in the Old Testament is separated. It's a picture of the things to come, and all of it from start to finish is a picture of the heavenly things. So, but it's tabernacles. It's pitching the tent with Christ, dwelling with Christ, and that's how that's all going to culminate. His people are going to live with him on the new heaven and the new earth, and he will be the king and the Lord, and he'll put an end to all the wickedness, idols, everything, all the false prophets. Everything's going to be done in the land. He's going to do a real house cleaning. What we saw in John 2, when he cleared the house of God, that was nothing. He's going to be clearing house when he comes. So there's going to be that great earthquake. Lightning from the east to the west, and all the things that it talks about. And the mountain will split, and his people will flee to the mountains. That remnant, and it talks about that in here. And this was written thousands of years. I would probably say about. I don't have the exact date here, so I don't. I would say at least 600 to 800 years. I can look that up and I'll get back to you on that. Before Revelation was written, this was written. I mean, this is still Old Testament. There's things like nuclear fallout that we described in verse 6 that just, and or 12, 14:12, sorry, of nuclear fallout. And it's just amazing. There's things that were just not known yet to the people. I could go on forever, and I'm not going to do that. I said this would be kind of a quick video, and that's where it ends. And we see that, and we see that Zechariah has been a great walk through the pre-incarnate Christ who showed up all throughout the Old Testament as the angel of the Lord. And he was there. And I even thought at one time, and I'd be curious, you guys can comment on these videos too, and I appreciate any conversation you'd like to have, but Melchizedek, going back to like Genesis 14 and 16, and it talks about how he showed up out of nowhere, instituted the bread and the wine. And then you get to like Hebrews, where over and over and over again it talks about Melchizedek, priesthood, and Christ. Christ is the better priesthood. And but what do you guys think? Do you think that Melchizedek in Genesis, who had no origins, no backstory, just all of a sudden showed up one day, and they refer to him as a priest? And like I said, I can't remember if it was chapter 14 or 16. Check it out. But in one of the 2 chapters in Genesis, it talks about him instituting the bread and the wine. And I think, the communion, the Last Supper, the Lord's table, which we as Christians celebrate. So, just something to think about. Comment. I'd be curious to see what you guys think. But I'll end it there. It's been a a long journey through these 14 chapters, but we spent about a year in this book. You can go back and check out all the other sermons in here. Um, Go to the His Truth Ministries Facebook page. I've done a lot of talking today. Sorry, my voice is going. Um, His Truth Ministries Facebook page. Uh, we have a lot of sermons on there, and then when we switched over, we continued them on YouTube, on this channel. So, what you don't get here, go look over there and like the page too. And I'll interact with you guys if you write and comment and whatever. But I'm gonna leave it here because I'm almost out of voice, and I'll be back and we'll talk. We'll start up next week with Passion Week, and I'm sure I'll have some little things to give you during the week. All right. So it is 8 o'clock. I'm actually gonna finally get to eat some dinner here. It's been a long day, it seems. You guys have a very good night. God bless you all. Thank you for watching my videos. Like, subscribe, share. Help me out. Help me grow my audience. I don't beg for these kind of things, but hey, you know, everything we do in ministry, we do by donation and by support. Prayers, sharing the videos, help me grow my audience. Um, you can donate, of course, anytime. I always tell people PayPal is the best way. MATHEWSAARON71 at gmail.com. Matthews Aaron 71 at gmail.com. You can do PayPal that way. Any donations are greatly appreciated. It's how I get books, resources, commentaries, study aids, things I can give to you guys and pass on. But so, God bless you guys. I want to let you go now, all right? You have a great night, have a great rest of the week, and I will be back. See ya.